Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and I have with me today the distinguished diplomat of India, Ambassador Talmeez Ahmad, who has served as ambassador to UAE and has also served as ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He's served in many parts of the world, including in the United States, and he has also served as secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs. So welcome to Conversation, Ambassador Ahmad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
So we will continue to talk about the war. We have discussed with Ambassador earlier, India's changing posture towards the Middle East. Today, I want to get back to this. I don't know how to describe this regional war, which seems to be having a global impact. So it is not exactly a world war, but it's a regional war with a world impact. So I wanted to begin by asking the ambassador, can you tell us how do you see this war going? Who is the winners? Are there any winners or losers? It's very difficult to predict because this is like, we don't even know whether this is the first quarter or the fourth quarter of the game. So given the uncertainty of when this war will end, how do you assess what's happening in the US-Israel's war on Iran, Ambassador?
When we look at so-called winners and losers, we attempt to look at the war aims of the principal participants. If you look at the war aim as far as Israel is concerned, as of now, Netanyahu has every reason to be satisfied. He has wanted this war on Iran for at least 4 decades, as he has himself said. He was always held back by the Americans, and even the most accommodative American president never was stupid enough to get embroiled in this agenda. He found in Donald Trump the right person, an absolutely imbecilic personality, no gravitas, no intellect, no knowledge of history or politics. He had him at the right place at the right time and was able to use him. So I would say that from his perception, he's doing well. What is his long-term agenda? Murder and mayhem as ends in themselves. He wants conflict. He wants the conflict to go on as much as possible, inflict as much damage as possible on the region. He has also moved on to Lebanon and is pounding Lebanon, and there is no one to stop him. So I would say, as of now, in terms of war aims, Israel would be looking good and feeling good about itself. There will be serious issues later, but we will talk about those as we go along. From the United States, I think it is the principal loser. It started the war with no real war aims, just pandering to the megalomania of the president. He was hoping for a very quick success, and within a few days, he wants to strut on the world stage, and that opportunity has been denied him. But what I'm alarmed about, and seriously alarmed about, is the very low moral character and fiber of the United States president. For him to have announced yesterday that there is a very substantial dialogue taking place with the Iranians, that there has been tremendous progress, and that he has therefore postponed bombardment of the Hormuz for 5 days, and then then we find that no such dialogue has taken place, that the president has lied to the international community. That is something completely abhorrent and despicable. But what is even more shocking is that he and his cronies have minted money on the stock market, playing there with insider trading. Very, very shocking news items that have come about he personally has possibly made $1.5 billion. Many other cronies of his have minted money. And this is something which is, I think it is a shame. With regard to Iran, the war was forced upon them. They thought they were engaged in a very serious dialogue with the Americans. They thought they had made tremendous progress. They thought that they were on the path of some kind of conciliation with the American side, and that they might get a respite from the confrontations going on for so many decades. I think they were quite shocked when the war was inflicted upon them. But if anyone thought in the international community that they will be just pounded into Smith and there will be nothing left of them, That has come as a very great shock. Iran has asserted itself. It has indicated that with all the disadvantages of 40 years of sanctions and all the issues that have been raised domestically and the systematic assassination of its top leadership, despite everything, every disadvantage that a country can have, I think they have come out of it extremely well as a warrior nation, as a warrior race. And I think that even the Israelis would have to think many times. Look at the fact that they have been able to they have been able to pound Israeli cities day after day. Israeli leadership is shocked. Their spokesperson said that there's an inquiry going on as to why their air defenses have failed. Israel has not told us about the extent of the damage, but Dimona nuclear facilities have been hit 5 times, and I think they have inflicted a lot of damage upon the Israelis, which they are not speaking about at all. So I think that if there is one country that overall has come out far better than we had all anticipated, I think it is Iran.
Uh, As we look forward, there is an argument that is coming out here in the United States that there is a disagreement or there is a disparity in the goals that the United States has and what Israel has in this conflict. And of course, I think I believe that to a great extent, Israeli goals will override if any goals Donald Trump has in this war. But do you think that if there is a dialogue, as there is a proposed, that perhaps Islamabad will host a dialogue between the Iranians and the Americans, if Americans agree to a deal, will Israelis agree to it? I mean, the question really is, will Netanyahu abide by agreements that Trump may make in order to end this war? Because it does appear that he's kind of tired of this, not getting anything to brag about, and the world is blaming him for the inability of the US and Israel to rescue the Strait of Hormuz from Iran's control. So he probably wants to cut his losses and leave, but will he be able to, or do you think that Israel will respect America, or it will be like Gaza? We talk about is that there has been a ceasefire in Gaza, but the violence by Israelis continues in Gaza.
You see, the Israeli side has made it very clear for them, prolonged low intensity conflict is to their benefit, to their advantage. They have no interest whatsoever in addressing the core issue of the region, and that is the Palestine issue. Given that position, they have told their citizens and anyone else who wishes to hear them that low intensity conflict will continue. It is the new normal for them. And therefore, they don't believe that there is any peace process. What they believe in is there is a temporary truce. In a set of circumstances, there is a truce. Remember, just 8 months ago, Netanyahu had pulled in the Americans, and there was that pounding of Iran. And Netanyahu publicly stated to his people that Israel had inflicted extraordinary damage upon Iran, and that Iran would not be a threat to Israel for generations to come. I quote to you. And 8 months later, he is back. There is no interest. And I don't think this is pure Netanyahu. This is the belief in the Israeli top leadership. Even Naftali Bennett may have the same view. I am not aware of a single Israeli politician who believes in a peace process that would accommodate the Palestinian aspirations. What therefore they have adjusted themselves to is periodic assault. Maintain a very high level of military capability and keep on hitting vulnerable targets. The principal targets that they have are all extraordinarily weak. They are either militia, very high on enthusiasm, very low on capability, military capability. And then you have Iran, which has suffered 40 years of sanctions and has practically no military capability at all. Israel does not face a single power in the region that can match it militarily. And it has no interest in getting involved with this. Can talk about Turkey and its role later on. As of now, this is the situation. You either they have got all the people, anyone who could be in the who could be a threat in the region has either been co-opted or is too weak and vulnerable. Recall here that attack on Doha last year, a very significant act, a signal to the Gulf Cooperation Council countries that you are not safe from us either. You may be close to the Americans, but we can hit you at will. That was a signal given to them. And I hope that signal has been properly understood. So, as of now, I think that Israel will continue. If there is now a kind of, if Donald Trump finally decides to back off in some set of circumstances, then I think Israel will go along with that. Israel has already created a reality on the ground in Lebanon. They are going to remain in South Lebanon for some time to come. And for the rest, they will bide their time, upgrade their energy, their own capabilities at home, and try to see what they can learn from this. But I think that if over the longer period of time, the Israeli position is not sustainable, we can discuss that over a conversation in the in the near future.
Ambassador Saab, this is a bit out of the syllabus. I mean, it just occurred to me to ask you, given the fact that you have served at least 3-4 terms in the region as ambassador, is there a strategic community in these Gulf countries where they discuss and debate national security, intelligence? You know, for a long time, there was this argument whether even a large country like India, which has such a professional foreign service, whether they have an a strategic intellectual community where foreign policy issues are discussed. So are these decisions by the Gulf countries made by just a handful of people, or do they have an elite there who discuss foreign policy options, and are they currently debating and discussing whether it was wise to have US bases in their countries? Was it wise to pursue this normalization of Israel without actually seeing any progress on the Palestinian issues? I mean, the whole purpose of that, the Abraham Accords, was to have peace and prosperity, and all they have ended up with is war and misery.
You have raised two separate issues, and they are obviously linked. One is the presence of American forces in the region and on every GCC country's soil. And second is whether they have an intellectual discourse relating to foreign policy issues. Let me respond to the two issues separately and then I will link them. First, yes, over the last 5 or 6 years, there is a proliferation of think tanks all across the GCC. And they are not only, they have their own people who are there, they also attract other Arab scholars who come and join them and produce material for them. And they also bring in scholars from third countries. They have all the structures and all the content and all the scholarship pertaining to foreign affairs. However, it should be noted that the real scholarship doesn't necessarily come in the public domain. Very often, their scholars produce papers that are not that are classified and which are inputs into the thinking at the top leadership. The top leadership is the one that takes all the serious decisions of strategic content and value, which have a bearing on the national interest. And there they are, that is non-transparent as far as the public domain is concerned, but that is the one, but it gets numerous inputs from very diverse sources. Uh, in the public domain, most of the material produced by the various think tanks reflect the broad thinking and interest of the country concerned. But it is really in the non-public documentation that you find genuine advice given to the people concerned, to the top people concerned. Now, coming to the American presence, the American presence goes back about 40 to 50 years. We are all aware that these countries were created on the basis that they would never be secure in themselves and they would always depend on a strategic alignment with earlier with Britain and now obviously with the United States and the Western powers in themselves. But obviously, over the last 2.5 decades, the GCC countries have realized that they are not necessarily secure in terms of their affiliation with the Americans. It is very self-evident, and scholars like you and I have watched with very self. It is very self-evident to us that this alignment has basically benefited the Americans' interest and not necessarily the interest of the countries concerned. Recall very many times these countries have given advice against a line of action. The Americans have brushed them aside and gone ahead. Very often they have suffered the consequences of American actions that they had been concerned about right at the beginning. Recall here I mean, recall here the attack by the Americans on Iraq in 2003. Every GCC country had advised against it. Every GCC country had said that this whole business of Shia empowerment is going to empower the Iranians more than anyone else. Yet they had no choice but to go along with supporting this completely mindless American initiative and lived with the consequences. What were the consequences? For the first time in Iraq, you had jihad. Abu Musab Zarqawi in the initial stages, and then you had the ogre
Oh,
of the Islamic State.
yeah.
Right? And you can multiply this. I don't want to waste your time on. So they know this. Throughout the first term of the first period of the Trump administration, they realized that the Americans are not for them. Earlier, they had talked about, during the Obama period, they had talked about the pivot to Asia. Obama negotiated the nuclear agreement with Iran without consulting the GCC or taking their interests into account. Then, during the Trump period, they saw numerous attacks upon their facilities and capabilities and interests and assets, and the Americans did nothing about it. At that time, they realized that they need to broaden their engagements. They turned to India and to China and to Russia at that time and they spoke the language of strategic autonomy. However, they are not yet the alternative security structure has not yet been thought through and has they are not yet been put in place. This architecture will have to wait. It will have to wait for the end of the conflict. What shape some of the writings that I have seen are very self-centered and completely mindless. And they basically say the GCC going back to the earlier, some have even talked about the Middle East security arrangement where the Gulf countries would go with Egypt and Israel and the United States. With deep respect, I point out this war was not initiated by Iran. It was initiated by the United States and Israel. On numerous occasions, the United States and Israel have shown no interest in or sensitivity towards GCC security interests. The GCC will have to think out of the box. The old structures and patterns and commitments will not hold. And I can discuss with you what that could be as
Sure.
we have time. But as of now, I'm simply saying to you the think tanks are not good for this. I'm going to say this very frankly. I'm myself affiliated with some of the think tanks and have very high regard for the people there. But in a scenario where the principal decision making is done non transparently and at a very high level, think tanks are not the answer. Think tanks very often merely reflect what the thinking is of the country in the public domain. If there are some of them who put up papers to the top leadership that think out of the box, that we will have to see once this crisis is done. As of now, we are getting very, there are some of the noises or some of the sounds that are coming from certain sources in different Gulf countries indicating a degree of anger. One of the top leaders, a prominent leader who has actually criticized the ineffectiveness of the Arab countries in coming to the assistance of some of the Gulf countries that have been attacked. But he would have known better than all of us. There is no Arab institution, whether it is the GCC or it is the Arab League or even the Islamic organization conference, I mean
Oh,
organization
I
for
see. Yeah.
Islamic. None of them has any capacity whatsoever to make a difference in any period of crisis. To put it very mildly, all of them are effective. They are ineffective and indeed pathetic. This is the scenario even with regard to the Security Council. Why should we insult only our neighborhood? Even the Security Council is totally pathetic today. The
Yeah.
world order is in chaos and anarchy. The United States system, political order is in chaos. And we have talked about this, and I expressed some of my anger at the beginning. Can you imagine the United States president taking his country and the international community for a ride in such crude terms, such fake and falsity? I think we have reached a low.
Even the language he's using is quite shocking. He's sometimes saying we are doing this as an excursion or we are doing this for fun. We are going to bomb them. We will
I
continue.
don't. I don't want to get more angry, Professor.
I understand. But one thing that has come out from this, which is very interesting, is what is happening with the Strait of Hormuz and its criticality. People have been talking about it. I have ran simulations where my undergraduate students playing Iran have immediately shut down Strait of Hormuz in any crisis. So it was not unexpected. There was no surprise. The only people who seem to be surprised by this is the Department of War in the United States. Everyone else would have predicted that this is what Iran is going to do. But in the long run, there seems to be some interesting developments about the future of the Strait of Hormuz. One thing that I strongly believe is that there will be an attempt by many countries to reduce the bottleneck with regards to Strait of Hormuz, which means that perhaps 4 or 5 years from now, it may not be as important because there will be bypasses invested in, like Saudi Arabia has one pipeline which is designed to go around, and the UAE, I think, also has one. But that will become another major step in the terms of de-risking the supply chain. But Iran is also talking about essentially charging a toll for ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz, and they're comparing it to the Suez Canal. Do you think that is actually something practical? Is it possible? Even Trump said something very surprising. He says that in the future, the Strait of Hormuz will be jointly managed by the US and Iran, apparently. I don't know, maybe he's still dreaming of installing...
With deep respect to the American president, I am just not able to to take anything that he takes seriously. I don't take it seriously. I don't believe he's in control of his rhetoric. I don't think he even fully understands what he's talking about. These are all idiotic remarks. You remember earlier he said, when there is a selection of the Iranian leader, I have to be consulted.
Yeah.
In fact, I will nominate in each. So let's not. I will. I don't want to reduce the high level
No,
of.
I think I think someone must have made that comment, and he kind of just pops out of
But
his
let
head.
me talk about the Hormuz. Let us see. The world has choke points. All of us academics have written about choke points. We've written academic papers about choke points. We have said that the choke point is a fair weather arrangement. It becomes a serious challenge to national security when there is conflict. All the choke points, whether it was the Houthis who closed the Bab al Mandeb and forced ships to go around the Cape of Good Hope, or the war of 1973 that closed the Suez Canal for 6 years. or the Malacca dilemma that the Chinese have been talking about for so many years. As of now, it is open, but the Chinese have said for the last 25 years that they face a serious challenge at Malacca and are looking at alternative ways to get energy and other products to their country. So Hormuz is just one of them. It is one of the choke points. In the Indian Ocean, you have Hormuz, Bab el Mandeb, Suez, and Malacca. So you have four of the major choke points in the
Right. Yeah.
Indian Ocean. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yes, countries will do what they have to do. As of now, you and I know that Asia will depend on hydrocarbons from the Gulf. Hydrocarbons from the Gulf overwhelmingly use Hormuz. The pipelines that Saudi Arabia has constructed from Jubail to Yanbu takes a certain amount of oil, but not all of it. Even there are pipelines that the UAE has constructed that open at Fujairah on the Indian Ocean.
Mhm.
Qatar has a big problem. Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and
Kuwait,
Kuwait have no such outlets at all. There
even
has been a
Iraq to
lot
some
of loose
extent.
talk. Yeah. Even Iraq also, but Iraq
Yeah.
can use a land thing.
Yeah.
The pipelines don't necessarily work, and the one from Kurdistan is not working. It gets opened and closed from time to time. But there is a potential that it could be done. This will see when we start discussing what the implications of this war are, I would put down looking at fresh logistics relating to energy movements at a very high level. You see, all these are fair weather arrangements. You know, we always talk of energy. What about food security? All the GCC countries import 90% of their food, and they are affected in different ways, but particularly by Bab al Mandeb and Hormuz, they are crucial in terms of food supplies. Remember when Qatar went through the siege
Yeah.
for nearly 3 years, and they had no food coming to them directly. They had to get it from Oman and from Iran and from Turkey, and at
Yes.
very high cost. Some of the food had to be airlifted in the early stages. So yes, we have the reality of choke points, and it happens that four of them are in the Indian Ocean, and that all of them are in areas of big power and middle power contentions. And various alternative arrangements will be made. No arrangement will be perfect. Because do recall that the Saudi pipeline comes into the Red Sea, and nobody is going to tell me that that's a great alternative to have, because the
No,
Red Sea
it does. Yeah.
itself can
It
be
does.
closed. The
Yeah.
Saudis have been, there is a lot of literature that says that the Saudis are looking for access to the Indian Ocean directly. Though Saudi Arabia occupies two-thirds of the Arabian Peninsula, it has no outlet on the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's been looking for a pipeline corridor, particularly through the province of Mala, which is at the Oman border, to have a corridor so that it will have an outlet coming out into the Indian Ocean directly. So, all of these are going to be issues that we will be discussing, and they will be coming up as new and fresh ideas. And yes, they will always, the main issues, Professor, is to address the core challenges.
Yeah.
And I will say to you honestly, the core challenge for West Asia is the Palestine issue. All the rest that you see is a superstructure. You have to address, you if you had a sensible government in Israel. You have now 6.5 to 7 million Palestinians and Jews living in that very, very tiny space at loggerheads with each other. You cannot pretend that there is any solution for the Palestinians other than a two-state solution, or ultimately at some moment a one-state solution. To all the discussion, going to war with your neighbors, constantly attacking them, believing that war is a normal, and all these contentions are primarily connected with that. If they were to address the Palestine issue, you would have Israel as a benign and valued presence in West Asia, all of us would be discussing how we can enhance our partnership and to see how we can work with each other for mutual benefit. Absent that, we will constantly be discussing futile alternative solutions which will not necessarily work during periods of extraordinary conflict that would encompass the region as a whole.
Benign Israel, I would retire in Jerusalem if that was the case. you know, so yeah, and
Well,
there
it
will
might
be,
happen. Don't give up on it.
inshallah,
Don't give up
inshallah.
on it.
Yes, and there are lots and lots of people who are thinking like this. I want to also look at this. I don't know whether you had you're traveling at the moment, but I wonder whether you saw Prime Minister Modi's speech to the Rajya Sabha, in which he briefly talked about West Asia without, I mean, he's talking about West Asia as if Israel and America don't exist. But what was to me interesting is that, I once did a show a few years ago. It was a sarcastic show for Dr. Jaishankar, saying, let me introduce a word to Dr. Jaishankar, which he perhaps has never heard of, called shuttle diplomacy. And the point I was trying to make was that, look, India has such high credibility and so much soft power, both in Iran as well as Israel, in Russia as well as in the West. So India could have become a major vehicle for, building trust between these and mediating on behalf of this. But India chose not to play the role of a mediator. And I find it very perplexing. And now to see that there is a possibility that Pakistan is going to step up and play that role, with Islamabad being the venue for a dialogue where J.D. Vance might meet with the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. Do you think that this is a major blind spot in Indian foreign policy, that it does not leverage its goodwill in nearly most of the world to actually become a peacemaker?
Good that you raised this issue, because this is a matter very close to my heart. All through the Cold War, India's leaders were very actively involved in regional and global diplomacy as peacemakers. And then once the Cold War was over, we just sort of gave up on all of this and became, as I have said many times, bilateral and transactional insofar as our engagements on the diplomatic stage were concerned. We have no interest in a collective engagement with the region. We have no interest in analyzing the security challenges that the region faces. And we certainly have no interest whatsoever in actively working towards addressing, ameliorating, and doing and bringing peace and stability to regions, even those that are extremely important for us. Look at West Asia. People like me and a few others for at least 15 years have been agitating in writing through academic papers and seminars that India should be actively involved in promoting peace and stability in the region, not necessarily on its own, but with other Asian countries. Now, I have also in my papers highlighted the fact that this has not been done before. It's not been done in Asia. Till recently, the Western countries dominated global discourse and never allowed anyone else to play any role. But ever since the Americans discredited themselves as security providers, I thought that the space was available for us. And a few of us, my colleagues and I, started writing papers discussing them as to how we could work towards promoting peace in the region. Separate, and we, in fact, put together a list of countries: China, Japan, Korea, and India. We said that first, these countries, Asian countries, have no experience whatsoever in working with each other. Secondly, they have no experience in working with each other to promote peace and stability anywhere. But, and we wrote papers about how this could be done. My last attempt was actually a very detailed approach, picking up on writings which had emerged about how Westphalia, the ideas of the Peace of Westphalia, could be applied in West Asia. And I wrote a very detailed paper on this subject, elaborating, and I shared my paper with Brendan Sims, and he was very impressed that there was, because in their book they had ended that we do not know who can play this role, and he had completely left out Asia. And when I gave him my paper, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry that I was too West centric. I criticized him and his colleagues as West centric. I said, you completely forgot that it is Asia that has the substantial relationship and concern with regard to West Asian stability. And you didn't even mention that we could play a role. So he then asked me in detail that what has India done so far? How did they react to your paper, etc. I said, nobody even read my paper, much less react to it. Let me say this, that we are losing it. Because now what has happened is in the 15 years when nothing has happened from the Indian side, China has stepped up its game. You know, China, when I first approached China, and this would be 2012, 2013, at Cambridge, when the Gulf scholars meet at the Gulf Research meeting, and there was this scholar from China, a very senior person, who was also the president of the Middle East Scholars Association in China. And so he said that he has 1,000 members, 1,000 scholars in China dealing with West Asia. And I told him, look, why don't we work together? We will first get to know each other through a track 2 dialogue, expand it into a track 1.5 dialogue, start writing papers as to how we could address these issues. We had at that time the Arab Spring uprisings, a lot of turmoil in the region. Saudi Arabia had turned against Iran, and there was a lot of discussion about a regional conflagration. And I had said at that time the regional conflagration hurts all of us, something like what is happening these days. It will hurt all of us. It's our energy security, it's our trade, investment, and joint ventures, and the safety of our people. All of these issues were put down in great detail. Chinese had similar interests and concerns as well. But he said one thing which is very important at that time, 15 years ago. He said, Ambassador, I hear you. I'm interested in what you have said, but we would like India to take the lead. You've been in this region for 5,000 years. We've been here for about a decade. You know, we don't know the history, we don't know the culture, we don't know the language, we don't know the religion. You're familiar with you take the lead and we will back you and support you. So this is, I'm telling you, since then, China has built up a lot of expertise with regard to West Asia. Every major university in China has a center for West Asian studies, and very many of their scholars are actually doing MA and PhD in the prominent universities the world over, including a lot of them are now located in the Gulf. So China is playing this role, but China can't do it on its own.
Sure.
China must have a broader support base from Asia. And I would say to you, India, China, Japan, Korea, this could be a very positive fallout of this horrible crisis that we are living through, which has harmed so many people. 72,000 dead in Palestine, another 1,000 dead in the West Bank, 1,000 dead in Lebanon, another 1,000, 1,500 or whatever you in Iran. This is not acceptable. And it has harmed us. The Westerners have one advantage over us. If things don't go their way, particularly Americans, they pack their bags and leave, as they have done repeatedly, whether
Sure.
it was Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq. They leave damage behind. We can't leave. This is our region. We belong here. So I would say, yes, I fully agree with you. We should get our act together. And one positive fallout of this could be that some of us Asian countries can start talking to each other to see how we can put our efforts together, our interests together, and to promote peace and stability, possibly a new security architecture in the region.
One of my professors, John Esposito, traveled to China, and he came back and he called me right away and he says, Muqtadar, you're not going to believe me. I spoke at a think tank in Beijing and they have 1,000 experts on the Middle East.
Exactly.
And even here at the University of Delaware, one of our Arabic professors, I think, was on sabbatical or something, and we hired a PhD student from University of Pennsylvania to come and teach Arabic. It was a Chinese. It was very interesting to have a Chinese coming and teaching Arabic here.
But there's still scope for us.
They need to develop
this
more.
This region is so large, it is so important, it is so significant that one country alone cannot handle all these issues. You must have a broad base. I would bring in Indonesia, Malaysia, and I would love to have Japan and Korea. I think after the conversation the respected leader of Japan had in the White House, maybe she would be encouraged to see her destiny lies with Asia and their co-partners in Asia. And we don't have to carry the historical baggage of the past. We should create new baggage of cooperation amongst us.
Yeah, I mean that invocation of the Pearl Harbor was so I want to ask you a question. I mean, is one of the reasons why India is reluctant to play the peacemaker is because it feels very insecure on the issue of Kashmir. And so it does not want to say, okay, that because India says we don't want any third party. India does not want to internationalize the Kashmir issue. They don't want anybody else making peace between India and Pakistan. And that is why India is reluctant to go and...
I'm not sure. That's
because
not,
then,
actually,
like, for example, if India says, okay, let me make peace between Iran and Israel, and then tomorrow Iran comes and says, okay, now it's my turn to make peace.
Look, I want to clarify to you. And this is a very fine distinction between mediation and good offices.
Yeah.
I'm not offering mediation. What China offered between Saudi Arabia and Iran in March 2023 was not mediation. It was good offices. Mediation means that you are actively involved in the discussion. I don't want to be actively involved. I want these issues to be addressed by the principal parties themselves. I am there to provide facilities, a good counsel if you so need, whispered in your ear. But I am not going to sit as a third party at the table for two people and say that you should do this or that. That's not our way. And that's not the Asian way. At the end of the day, the principal parties concerned have to address the issues themselves. What do we offer? We offer counsel. We also, once there is an agreement, we are available to ensure that the agreement is implemented, because there could be glitches. There could be glitches and there would be somebody saying, look, this understanding. Much of this is done diplomatically behind the scenes. And by the way, may I say with all, so I would say that I'm not looking at mediation, and therefore I don't see the Kashmir parallel being operational as yet in this regard.
I want to take another stab at this. So if about 3-4 years ago, I was on a panel with some Indonesian, Malaysian, East Asian ambassadors from prominently. And this was in Kuala Lumpur, and it was the discussion at that time was the refugees that were coming from Rohingya refugees who were going all over the East Asian. And so there was this much talk about like I was saying that this is one of the failures of ASEAN countries, that they have not been able to resolve this matter with Myanmar. And what are you doing? I mean, Myanmar is part of the ASEAN, and so what was interesting was that all of those ASEAN ambassadors ganged up on me, and they kept saying, "Oh, you even though you're an Indian American, you're talking like an American. You don't understand the Asian way." And the Asian way is not, like this. And at the end of the day, all I had to say was, look, the Asian way is failing in the case of Myanmar. So you can lecture me as much as you like about what the virtues of the ASEAN system of negotiations and the Asian way. But where is the Asian way in this Iran conflict? Where is the Asian way in the Kashmir
I would,
issue?
with all respect to my friends in Southeast Asia, this kind of, mm, you know, claptrap, using terminologies that are well past their use by date. We are living in a world which is a completely new challenge for us. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as the Asian way. There is no such thing as Asian human rights. I'm going to say to you that the one thing we should learn from this war is that we have to come up with fresh ideas and fresh ways of doing things. India is among them. I mean, how many times am I going to sit in front of you and express anguish that my country is doing nothing? My country should be actively involved. I agree with you, we have a millennia old relationship with the region. There is very deep understanding and respect for us. When we have a long cultural background which has inculcated in us very deep values, and yet we seem to be floundering. What happened to those cultural values that should give us sense of understanding, moderation, accommodation, and promote us not with arrogance, but encourage us to promote peace and stability? I think that once this horrible conflict is done, the one positive thing that may come out of it, two of them, in fact, I'm going to say to you. Number one, the United States is thoroughly discredited, with the American president seeking to make profit, for personal profit, for himself and his cronies and families out of a horrendous war, is something I think the American, they are used to so much rotten conduct from their political leaders. I think they will have to come forward now and speak up. Number two, Israel has had a free ride for far too long, entirely due to the Americans. First, the Jewish lobby, then the Christian evangelists, and then there is this person. When both have backed off, you have Donald Trump in the White House. As Donald Trump discredits himself, I think he has discredited Netanyahu. Netanyahu's great success has been he does not allow anyone to say anything about his conduct because it is deemed to be anti Semitic. I think there will be a post anti Semitic syndrome. Already literature has emerged. Look at the remarks that Tucker Carlson has made. The person we thought he's from the far right, he's the one who held his own with the editor of The Economist and put her in her place firmly. He has
Mm.
raised issues which should have been raised much earlier, that what is this business of Israel's right to exist? Who has challenged this right to exist? My problem is the opposite, that Israel will not let anyone else exist. It will
I mean,
not
this
let
is,
the Palestinians exist. They have also occupied territories in Lebanon. They can go and wreak havoc anywhere they wish. Murder and mayhem has ended in themselves. That should be the issue that will be discussed. So I
you
would
know,
say
I
that
agree.
possibly this is where we will be going, that as the United States discredits itself and as loses a lot of its standing and hopefully at some stage becomes a normal country, this is the opportunity for Asia. And I think this is where Asia, I'm not talking military,
Your voice has cut off, sir. Something
I'm
happened.
talking about
Yeah,
diplomacy. And
yeah.
that's where I want to go.
In the past, I've also asked this question repeatedly whether whose rights were violated when the Soviet Union disappeared. Did the Soviet Union have a right to exist? This idea that countries have a right to exist is kind of ridiculous.
As he answered, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm quoting Mr.
Yeah,
Carlson.
but
He
yeah,
said every country has a right to exist,
exactly. Every country
but they
has
have
the
to
right to.
risk. Yes, yes.
Yes, but it was an interesting. I mean, he has mainstreamed this thing, which would have a year ago been considered fringe and anti-Semitic, and he's being accused of being anti-Semitic. It is quite possible that even the U.S. government may take legal action against him. But you're right that there are some bigger questions being raised as a result of this war, which would not have been discussed before. So, Ambassador Talmeez Ahmad Saab, thank you very much for joining conversations. As usual, you're very candid and very thought-provoking and brilliant and my viewers just love listening to you. And please have a safe
Kind of.
trip back,
Thank you very much.
and have a
Thank
safe
you,
trip back to
Professor.
India.
Thank you for your invitation.
Thank
I
you very
wish
much.
you all the best. Thank you. Thank you.